Ambassador Alina Vance stood alone in the center of the largest room she had ever seen. The tribunal chamber stretched upward for nearly a mile. Thousands of alien delegates sat in floating platforms that circled around her like rings around a planet. She could feel their eyes on her. Some looked curious. Most looked angry. The High Arbiter of the Valdor Collective floated down from his platform. He was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to glow in the chamber's blue light. His voice echoed through the massive space when he spoke. Human Ambassador Alina Vance, you stand before this tribunal to answer for crimes against galactic civilization. Your species has committed the ultimate sin. You have erased an entire people from existence. Alina kept her hands folded in front of her. She did not look away from the Arbiter's cold eyes. You gave your species 150 years of peace, the Arbiter continued. We protected your primitive world from threats you could not even imagine. We watched over you like guardians. And how did humanity repay this kindness? He paused and looked around the chamber. Every delegate leaned forward to hear his next words. You returned only genocide. A wave of angry murmurs spread through the chamber. Alina heard words in dozens of languages she did not understand. But she understood their meaning well enough. They wanted justice. They wanted punishment. The Arbiter raised one long hand, and the chamber fell silent. Oh, the Sketh were a peaceful species. 12 billion souls lived on their homeworld and colony planets. Within 3 years of human contact, every single one of them was dead. Not a single Sketh remains alive in this galaxy. Humanity did this. Humanity must answer for this. Alina waited until the Arbiter finished. Then she took a slow breath and spoke in a clear voice. Honored Arbiter, I request the right to present humanity's defense before this tribunal. May speak human. But I warn you, no words can justify extinction. Alina nodded slowly. Then let me begin not with words, but with a question. You say the Valdori protected Earth for 150 years. You say you watched over us? So tell me, Arbiter, why did you never mention the Sketh to us? Why did we have to discover them on our own? The Arbiter's silver face showed no emotion. The Sketh were not your concern. They lived in a different sector of space. Ah, that is not entirely true, Alina said. She pulled a small device from her pocket and pressed a button. A holographic display appeared in the air above her head. It showed a star map with 2 regions highlighted in red. 30 years ago, our colony ship Horizon's Hope was traveling through what we believed was empty space. We did not know that this region had a name among your people. You called it a quarantine zone. More murmurs spread through the chamber. Alina noticed that some of the delegates were looking at the Valdori, representatives with new expressions, confusion, suspicion. Our ship encountered the Sketh by accident, Alina continued. Captain Marcus Chen sent a greeting message, as was standard protocol for first contact. The Sketh responded warmly. They seemed happy to meet us. They invited our people to their world, the Arbiter interrupted her. We quarantined the Sketh for good reason. They were deemed too dangerous for contact with other species. Alina turned to face him directly. Then why did you not warn us? In 150 years of so-called protection, you've never once mentioned that a dangerous species lived just beyond our colony routes. You never told us about the quarantine zones? You left us completely blind. It was not necessary for you to know. Not necessary? Elena's voice rose slightly. Arbiter, our people walked into that quarantine zone without any idea of the danger. And when we sent distress signals, when we begged for help, your collective did nothing. We later discovered that you blocked all communications from quarantine zones. You trapped us there with whatever you were so afraid of. The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates shouted questions at each other. Several Valdori representatives stood up in protest. The Arbiter raised both hands and demanded silence. These accusations are irrelevant, he said firmly. Whatever mistakes the collective may have made, they do not excuse genocide. You killed 12 billion sentient beings. Alina lowered her head for a moment. When she raised it again, her eyes were filled with sadness. Yes, she said quietly. Yes, we did. And not a single human who was there takes pride in what happened. But before you judge us, you must understand what we faced. You must understand what the Sketh really were. She pressed another button on her device. The holographic display changed. Now it showed images of humans and Sketh standing together. They were smiling, shaking hands, sharing meals. Children of both species played together in green fields. "This is what first contact looked like," Alina said. "The Sketh appeared to be everything we hoped to find among the stars. They were intelligent, kind, and generous. They shared their medical knowledge with us freely. They helped us cure diseases that had killed millions of our people. In return, we helped them build better homes and machines. For 8 years, we believed we had found true friends among the stars." The Arbiter studied the images with narrow eyes. "If they were such good friends, Ambassador, why did you kill them all?" Alina closed her eyes briefly. The pain on her face was real, because friendship was never their goal. It was their hunting strategy. She changed the display again. Now it showed medical reports, charts of brain scans, lists of symptoms that started small and grew worse over time. Memory loss, mood changes, violence, and finally something that made no sense at all: willing surrender. "The Sketh had been feeding us poison for 8 years, Alina said, a compound hidden in the food and medicine they so generously shared. It changed our brain chemistry slowly. It made us happy. It made us trusting. And eventually it made us willing to do anything they asked, including walking calmly to our own deaths." The chamber had gone completely silent. Every eye was fixed on Alina. "You asked me how friendship becomes extinction, Arbiter? I will show you. But first, you must understand something important." She looked up at the thousands of delegates watching her. "The Sketh did not see us as friends. They saw us as food, and humanity was not their first meal. We were meant to be their 8th. She pressed another button. A recording began to play. The voice was not human. It was soft and musical, almost gentle, but the words it spoke were horrifying. "We waited so long for a species compatible with the harvest," the voice said. "Thank you for being so trusting." Lena turned back to the Arbiter. "That was Elder Thrava, the Sketh leader who first welcomed us with open arms. He recorded this message for Captain Chen right before the harvest began." She took a step forward. "Humanity killed 12 billion Sketh, but before you deliver your judgment, you will hear what those 12 billion Sketh plan to do to us, and you will learn why the Valdori locked them away in the first place. Because I think this tribunal deserves to know the truth. All of it." The Arbiter stared at her for a long moment. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Continue, Ambassador. Show us everything." Alina turned to face the full chamber. Her voice was steady, but heavy with grief. "Then let me tell you about the harvest." The holographic display above Elena's head changed to show a beautiful green planet. Rivers of crystal blue water cut through vast forests. Cities made of white stone rose gently from the landscape, built to blend with nature rather than replace it. "This was Sketh Prime," Elena said. "When the Horizon's Hope first arrived in orbit, Captain Marcus Chen thought they had found paradise." The display shifted to show footage from 30 years ago. A landing party of 12 humans stepped off their shuttle onto soft grass. Waiting for them were the Sketh. They stood about 5 feet tall with smooth pale skin and large dark eyes. Their movements were graceful and slow. Their faces seemed designed for smiling. "The Sketh greeting party brought gifts," Alina continued. "Flowers from their gardens, fruit from their orchards. They spoke through translation devices they had built themselves. Their first words to humanity were simple. Welcome, friends from the stars. We have waited so long to meet someone like you." In the tribunal chamber, several delegates leaned forward with interest. The footage showed Captain Chen shaking hands with a Sketh elder. Both were smiling warmly. Captain Chen was a good man, Elena said. He had spent 40 years in space hoping to find intelligent life. When he met Elder Thrava, he believed his life's dream had come true. The two of them became close friends over the following months. The display showed more scenes of human and Sketh interaction. Scientists working together in laboratories, engineers building bridges side by side, children learning each other's games and languages. The Sketh seemed perfect in every way, Alina said. They were vegetarians who grew their own food in massive gardens. They had no weapons, no military, no history of war. Their medicine was centuries ahead of our own. Within the first year, they shared treatments that cured 3 diseases which had killed millions of humans. The Arbiter spoke with a cold voice. "You paint a pretty picture, Ambassador, but pictures can lie." "This picture was true," Elena replied. For 8 years, the partnership between humans and Sketh brought nothing but good. Trade routes were established. 3 joint colonies were built where both species lived together. Human doctors learned Sketh healing techniques. Sketh engineers learned human construction methods. Many predicted that this friendship would last for centuries. She paused and lowered her eyes. Captain Chen's daughter Sarah was born on Sketh Prime. She grew up playing with Sketh children. She considered Elder Thrava to be like a grandfather. She learned to speak their language before she mastered her own. For her first 10 years of life, she knew nothing but love and happiness. The display changed to show a young girl with brown hair running through a Sketh garden. Flowers of every color surrounded her. She was laughing as Sketh children chased her through the rows of plants. "This is the part that haunts me most," Elena said quietly. "Because what happened to Sarah Chen happened to hundreds of thousands of others, and none of them saw it coming." She pressed a button, and medical charts appeared on the display. In year 8 of the partnership, human doctors began noticing strange symptoms in colony residents. It started small. People forgot little things, names, dates, where they had put their keys. Doctors assumed it was stress or exhaustion. Colony life was difficult. After all, charts showed timelines and symptom progression. But the symptoms grew worse. Memory loss became more severe. People began having mood swings. Some became unusually happy all the time, even when there was no reason for joy. Others had episodes of sudden violence, attacking friends and family for no cause. And then came the strangest symptom of all. Elena's voice dropped lower. The affected humans began talking about something they called the giving. They said it was beautiful. They said it was the highest honor a person could receive. When doctors asked what the giving meant, the patients just smiled and said they would understand soon. The tribunal chamber was completely silent now. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was a xenobiologist stationed on the largest joint colony. She began investigating these symptoms when her own husband started showing them. What she discovered changed everything. The display showed molecular diagrams and brain scans. There was a compound hidden in every Sketh product that humans consumed. Their fruits, their vegetables, their medicines. Even the flowers they gave us as gifts released it into the air. This compound was designed specifically to bond with human brain chemistry. It had been engineered with terrifying precision. Elena looked up at the delegates. Sketh had not discovered this compound by accident. They had created it, refined it, perfected it over thousands of years, and they had used it before. On 7 other species, gasps echoed through the chamber. Dr. Tanaka found records hidden in Sketh databases. The Sketh were not vegetarians. They had never been vegetarians. They were parasites who fed on the neural tissue of sentient beings. But they did not hunt their prey. They cultivated it. The display showed ancient Sketh texts with translations appearing beside them. The conditioning compound made victims docile and happy over several years. It slowly rewired their brains to feel pleasure from the idea of sacrifice. By the final stage, victims did not resist the harvest. They welcomed it. They walked to the feeding chambers with smiles on their faces. Grateful for the honor of giving themselves to the Sketh, Elena's hands trembled slightly as she continued. 200,000 humans across 3 colonies were already affected. Some were in early stages. Others were nearly complete. Among them was Sarah Chen, now 18 years old. She had been eating Sketh food her entire life. The display showed a video message. A young woman with brown hair sat in a white room. Her eyes were glassy but peaceful. She smiled as she spoke. "Father, I understand now why you were always so worried about me. But there is no need for worry. The giving is almost here." Elder Thrava explained everything. "We are going to become part of something greater. I am not afraid. I am happy." This is the greatest gift anyone can receive. Lena paused the video. Sarah Chen sent this message to her father, Captain Marcus Chen, 3 days before the harvest was scheduled to begin. Captain Chen watched his daughter thank her killers for the privilege of being eaten. The Arbiter's silver face had grown pale. "What did your people do?" he asked. "What any parent would do," Elena said. "We tried to save our children." Dr. Tanaka worked without sleep for months to develop a cure for the conditioning. She found one that worked for early-stage victims. But for those like Sarah, whose conditioning was nearly complete, there was nothing she could do. The changes to their brains were permanent. Alina closed her eyes. And then the Sketh discovered that we knew the truth. Elder Thrava sent one final message to Captain Chen. He did not apologize. He did not show any guilt. He simply explained that since the surprise was ruined, the harvest would begin immediately. All 200,000 affected humans would be collected within the week. She opened her eyes and looked directly at the Arbiter. "So you ask me how friendship becomes extinction? This is how." The friendship was never real. It was farming. And when the farmers realized their crops might escape, they tried to harvest early. The tribunal chamber remained frozen in shocked silence. Captain Chen had to make an impossible choice in that moment. Let the harvest continue and lose everything, or stop the Sketh permanently and live with the consequences forever. Lena paused. He chose to fight, and that is when humanity declared war on the species that had pretended to love us. She straightened her shoulders and faced the Arbiter. But we did not want war. We wanted our people back. We wanted our children back. And we were willing to do anything to save them. What followed was the darkest chapter in human history, and I will tell you all of it. Every terrible detail, because this tribunal deserves to know what humanity is capable of when everything we love is threatened. The Arbiter nodded slowly. "Continue, Ambassador. Tell us about the war." Lena pressed another button on her device. The holographic display above her head showed a star map with 47 blinking red dots scattered across a vast region of space. When Captain Chen learned the truth about the Sketh, his first action was not to attack. It was to call for help. She pointed to the red dots on the map. These are the locations where human ships sent emergency distress signals to the Valdori Collective. 47 separate messages sent over a period of 2 years. Each one described the situation in detail. Each one begged for assistance. Each one asked for guidance on how to handle a crisis we were not prepared to face. The Arbiter shifted uncomfortably in his floating platform. Not a single message received a response, Elena continued. We thought perhaps our signals were too weak. Perhaps the distance was too great. Perhaps the Valdori simply did not receive them. So we sent ships to carry messages directly. 3 vessels traveled toward Valdori's space with desperate pleas for help. She changed the display to show 3 small ships approaching an invisible barrier in space. None of them made it through. Each ship hit some kind of energy field and was forced to turn back. We did not understand what was happening. We thought our technology had failed. We thought we were alone because of bad luck or broken equipment. Her voice hardened slightly. It was only after the war ended that we learned the truth. The Valdori Collective had established communication blockers around all quarantine zones. No signals could get in or out. No ships could pass the barriers. You did not simply ignore our calls for help. You made it impossible for us to reach you. Angry murmurs spread through the chamber. Several non-Valdori delegates were staring at the Valdori representatives with open hostility. We accept that the quarantine zones existed for good reason, Alina said. The Sketh were dangerous. Perhaps containing them was the right choice. But trapping others inside with them, blocking their cries for help, that was not protection. That was abandonment. The Arbiter raised his hand. The quarantine protocols were established long before humanity existed. We did not design them with you in mind. And yet you never thought to warn us about them, Alina replied. You watched over Earth for 150 years. You knew our colony ships were exploring nearby space. You knew we might stumble into a quarantine zone, and you said nothing. She let the accusation hang in the air for a moment before continuing. But I did not come here to blame the Valdor. I came to explain what humanity did when we realized no help was coming. When we understood that we had to face the Sketh alone, the display changed to show military formations and battle plans. Captain Chen formed a war council with leaders from all 3 joint colonies. They had limited weapons, limited ships, and limited time. The Sketh had announced the harvest would begin in 7 days. After that, 200,000 humans would be taken to feeding chambers and consumed. Elena's expression grew grim. The council's first priority was evacuation. We had to get unaffected humans out of Sketh territory before the harvest began. Transport ships worked around the clock to move families to safety. But the Sketh controlled the space around their worlds. They began intercepting our evacuation vessels. The display showed footage of human ships being surrounded by Sketh craft. The Sketh did not have traditional weapons. They did not need them. Their ships released clouds of concentrated conditioning compound into the air systems of captured vessels. Within hours, everyone aboard would become docile and compliant. Ready for harvest? Lena paused. We lost 6 evacuation ships this way. 4,000 people, captured and converted. Among them were children as young as 2 years old. Horror spread across the faces of many delegates. Captain Chen made the decision that every human leader dreaded. He ordered our ships to fight back, not to capture, not to negotiate, to destroy any Sketh vessel that approached our evacuation fleet. The display showed brief flashes of combat. Human ships firing on Sketh craft. Explosions lighting up the darkness of space. The Sketh were not prepared for violence. Their entire civilization was built on patience and deception, not warfare. Their ships had no shields, no armor, no weapons. When we fought back, they died quickly. Alina lowered her head. I will not pretend this was heroic. It was slaughter. The Sketh vessels that approached our fleet were crewed by beings who had never experienced combat. They did not know how to fight. They only knew how to harvest. And we destroyed them without mercy because our children were on those evacuation ships. The chamber remained silent. The Sketh responded by accelerating their plans. They began the harvest 4 days early. Our people in the joint colonies were rounded up and taken to feeding chambers. The conditioning compound had done its work well. Most of them went willingly. Some even helped the Sketh capture those who tried to resist. Lena's voice cracked slightly. Sarah Chen led a group of conditioned humans to capture her own father. Captain Chen was forced to watch his daughter smile as she handed him over to Elder Thrava. The last thing she said to him was, "Thank you for raising her to be worthy of the giving." She took a moment to compose herself. Captain Chen escaped 3 days later with help from a rescue team. But by then, the harvest had claimed over 100,000 humans. They were not killed quickly. The Sketh feeding process lasted for weeks. The victims remained conscious and happy throughout. They felt only joy as they were slowly consumed. The Arbiter spoke quietly. This is difficult to hear. It was more difficult to live through, Elena replied. But this is what humanity faced. This is why we did what we did next. Because we learned something terrible during those weeks. Something that made our choice clear. Display changed to show laboratory reports and scientific data. Dr. Tanaka continued her research even as the harvest proceeded. She analyzed everything she could find about Sketh, biology, and history, and she discovered why the Valdor had quarantined them in the first place. Alina looked up at the chamber. The Sketh had consumed 7 species before humanity. Each time, they completely eliminated their prey. Not because they were cruel, because it was necessary. The conditioning compound created a bond between the Sketh and their victims. If any conditioned individuals survived and escaped, they would eventually die from withdrawal, and their deaths would be slow and agonizing. She changed the display to show biological diagrams. The Sketh were not simply predators. They were a biological trap. Once you ate their food, breathed their air, or accepted their medicine, you belonged to them forever. There was no escape. There was no cure for late-stage conditioning. The only mercy was the harvest itself. Elena's eyes met the Arbiter's. Do you understand now why we could not simply run away? Even if we evacuated every human from Sketh space, 200,000 of our people would suffer and die. Their brains had been permanently changed. They could not survive without the Sketh, and the Sketh would never let them go. She straightened her shoulders. So Dr. Tanaka began working on a different solution. If we could not save the conditioned, and we could not live with the Sketh, then we had only one option left. We had to end the threat permanently. We had to make sure the Sketh could never harvest another species again. The display showed complex genetic sequences and molecular structures. Dr. Tanaka created a pathogen, a biological weapon designed to target Sketh physiology and nothing else. It would spread through their population quickly and kill within days. It was, in effect, a tool for extinction. Alina closed her eyes, and humanity had to decide whether to use it. The tribunal chamber sat in heavy silence. Every delegate understood the weight of the choice that had faced humanity: kill or be killed, genocide or extinction. Alina opened her eyes and looked at the thousands of beings watching her. The vote was not unanimous. Many humans argued that extinction was too extreme, that there must be another way, that becoming killers would destroy our souls even if it saved our bodies. She paused. But in the end, the majority chose survival, and the order was given. She turned to face the Arbiter directly. Admiral Chen, the son of Captain Marcus Chen, commanded the fleet that delivered the pathogen to every Sketh world. He watched his father die in the final rescue attempt. He knew his sister was beyond saving, and he carried the weight of 12 billion deaths on his shoulders so that humanity could live. Her voice dropped to a whisper. That is not a victory. That is a wound that will never heal. Lena gestured toward the entrance of the tribunal chamber. The massive doors slowly opened, and 2 human soldiers walked in. Between them was a hover chair carrying an elderly man. His hair was white and thin. His face was covered with deep lines. His eyes looked tired in a way that sleep could never fix. Honored delegates, Elena said, I present Admiral James Chen. He is the man who gave the order to deploy the pathogen. He is the man who ended the Sketh species. And he has come here today to speak for himself. The soldiers positioned the hover chair beside Alina and stepped back. Admiral Chen looked up at the thousands of alien faces watching him. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the arms of his chair. Thank you, Ambassador, he said. His voice was rough with age, but still clear. I will not ask for your forgiveness. What I did cannot be forgiven. I can only tell you why I did it. He pressed a button on his chair, and a personal holographic display appeared in front of him. It showed the face of a young woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. This was my sister Sarah. She was the sweetest person I ever knew. When we were children, she would catch insects in our garden and carry them outside rather than kill them. She believed every living thing deserved kindness. His voice wavered. The Sketh turned her into a weapon against her own family. They made her feel joy while she betrayed us. When she handed our father to Elder Thrava, she was smiling. She thought she was doing something beautiful. Admiral Chen closed the display and looked up at the tribunal. I tried to save her. Even after Dr. Tanaka said there was no cure, I refused to give up. I led 3 rescue missions into Sketh territory to reach her. On the 3rd mission, my father died protecting me from Sketh guards. His last words were a request to save his daughter. Tears formed in the old man's eyes. I could not save her. The conditioning had changed her brain permanently. Even if I had dragged her away from the Sketh by force, she would have spent her remaining months in agony. The withdrawal would have destroyed her mind piece by piece. She would have died screaming. He wiped his eyes with a shaking hand. So I had a choice. Let my sister and 200,000 other humans die slowly and painfully. Let the Sketh continue their harvest until they grew strong enough to find more victims. Rended. End all of it. Forever. Admiral Chen looked directly at the Arbiter. I gave the order to release the pathogen on a Tuesday morning. I remember the exact time. I remember the exact words I used. I remember everything about that moment because I have replayed it in my mind every single day for 30 years. He pulled up another display. This one showed Sketh Prime from orbit. The beautiful green world filled the screen. The pathogen worked faster than Dr. Tanaka predicted. Within 6 days, the first Sketh began dying. Within 2 weeks, the population of Sketh Prime had dropped by half. Within 1 month, there were no living Sketh left on the planet. The display changed to show other Sketh worlds. One by one, they went dark. 12 billion Sketh died because of my order. 12 billion thinking, feeling beings who had families and dreams and fears. I killed them all. Admiral Chen's voice grew thick with emotion. I did not enjoy it. I did not celebrate. When the last Sketh died, I locked myself in my quarters and wept for 3 days. I wept for my sister who I could not save. I wept for my father who died trying. And I wept for the billions of Sketh who were only following their nature. He looked around the chamber. The Sketh did not choose to be predators. They were born that way. Their biology demanded the harvest. Refusing it would have meant their own extinction. In a different universe, perhaps we could have found another solution. Perhaps we could have fed them without killing sentience. Perhaps we could have cured their hunger. His shoulders sagged. But we did not have time for it, perhaps. We had weeks, not decades. We had limited resources and no allies. We had children being devoured while we debated ethics. So I made the choice that haunts me still. I chose humanity over the Sketh. Admiral Chen pressed another button. The display showed a vast field of white stone markers stretching to the horizon. After the war, I ordered the construction of a memorial on Sketh Prime. Every marker bears a name. Human names and Sketh names together. 847,000 humans died before the pathogen took effect. 12,000 more died with the Sketh because their conditioning was complete and they could not survive alone. His voice broke. My sister Sarah is buried there. She refused evacuation. She refused rescue. In the end, she walked into a feeding chamber and let the Sketh take her because she believed it was the greatest honor she could receive. Her last message to me said she hoped I would understand someday. Admiral Chen wiped his face. I understand now. I understand that the Sketh truly believed they were giving their victims a gift. I understand that Elder Thrava loved my sister in his own way. I understand that from their perspective, the harvest was sacred and beautiful. He shook his head slowly. But understanding does not mean accepting. The Sketh way of life required the suffering and death of other sentient species. That could not be allowed to continue. So I ended it, and I carry that weight every moment of every day. The tribunal chamber remained silent. Many delegates had tears in their eyes. Even some Valdori looked moved. Admiral Chen straightened in his chair. You asked humanity to answer for genocide? I am the answer. I am the man who made the choice. I am the one who should be punished if punishment is required. Not the human species. Not the survivors who lost everything. Just me. He looked at the Arbiter. I am 92 years old. I have nightmares every night about Sketh children who never had a chance to become something different. I see their faces when I close my eyes. I hear their screams in quiet moments. This is my punishment. This has been my punishment for 30 years. Admiral Chen pulled up one final display. It showed the memorial inscription carved into black stone. Here lie 2 species who failed each other. May those who follow learn what we could not. He let the words hang in the air. I wrote that inscription myself. Because the truth is that the Sketh were not monsters. They were people trapped by their own biology. They built beautiful cities. They composed music that made my sister cry with joy. They raised children with love and care. And they also consumed sentient beings because they could not survive otherwise. Admiral Chen closed all his displays and folded his hands in his lap. Humanity killed the Sketh because we had no other choice. But we did not kill them with hatred. We killed them with grief. Every human who participated in that war carries scars that will never fade. We became something we never wanted to be. We became killers of billions. He looked up at the tribunal one final time. Condemn us. Punish us if you must. But know this. If any species in this chamber faced the same choice that humanity faced, you would have done the same thing. You would have chosen your children over strangers. You would have fought to survive. That is not evil. That is nature. And sometimes nature is cruel. Admiral Chen lowered his head. I have nothing more to say. My life's work is written in blood and tears. I leave my fate in your hands. Alina placed a gentle hand on the old man's shoulder. Then she turned to face the Arbiter. Humanity rests its case. We ask only that you consider all the evidence before delivering your verdict. The Arbiter stared at Admiral Chen for a long moment. Then he raised his hand. This tribunal will reassess to consider the evidence. We will return with our decision tomorrow. As the delegates began to leave their platforms, Alina noticed something unexpected. Many of them were not looking at humanity with anger anymore. They were looking at the Valdori with questions in their eyes. The real trial, Alina realized, was just beginning. The tribunal chamber felt different when Alina returned the next morning. The angry energy that had filled the room during the first day was gone. In its place was something more complicated: uncertainty, doubt, and in many eyes. Shamed Alina noticed that the Valdori delegates were sitting apart from the others. Several non-Valdori species had moved their platforms away, creating visible distance. Something had changed overnight. Admiral Chen sat beside her in his hover chair. He looked exhausted. Alina doubted he had slept at all. The High Arbiter floated down to the center of the chamber. His silver face was impossible to read, but his movements seemed slower than before, heavier. This tribunal has considered all evidence presented by both sides, he announced. We have also reviewed additional records that were brought to our attention after yesterday's session. He glanced toward the Valdori delegation. Several of them looked away. It has come to light that the Voldor Collective was aware of human presence in the quarantine zone within the first year of contact. Internal communications showed that a proposal was made to warn humanity about the Sketh and assist with evacuation. This proposal was rejected by Valdoria leadership. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The reason given for rejection was that humanity was considered expendable. The phrase used in official documents was acceptable losses. Valdori leadership believed that the Sketh would eliminate humanity quickly and that this would serve as a useful test of quarantine effectiveness. Alina felt her hands ball into fists. Beside her, Admiral Chen's jaw tightened. Furthermore, the Arbiter continued. Records showed that 47 human distress signals were received and logged by Valdori monitoring stations. Each one was reviewed and filed without action. The decision to ignore these calls for help was made at the highest levels of Valdor government. The chamber erupted in angry shouts. Delegates from dozens of species were yelling at the Valdori platforms. Security officers moved to maintain order. The Arbiter raised both hands and waited for silence. This tribunal was convened to judge humanity for genocide. But it appears that judgment must be broader. The Valdori Collective trapped an innocent species with known predators and deliberately allowed them to suffer. This was not negligence. This was policy. He turned to face Alina directly. Ambassador Vance, on behalf of this tribunal, I offer humanity a formal apology. You were failed by those who claimed to protect you. You were abandoned when you needed help most. And you were forced into an impossible situation that no species should ever face. Alina stood slowly. Her voice was steady when she spoke. Thank you, Arbiter. But humanity did not come here seeking apologies. We came to tell our story and accept responsibility for our actions. Whatever the Valdor did or failed to do, it was still human hands that released the pathogen. It was still our choice to end the Sketh. Admiral Chen raised his head. Out. We do not blame others for what we did, he added. The Valdori made their choices. We made ours. History will judge all of us. The Arbiter nodded slowly. Very well. Then let me proceed to the verdict. The chamber fell completely silent. On the charge of genocide against the Sketh species, this tribunal finds humanity not guilty. Relief washed over Alina. She heard cheers from somewhere in the chamber. The evidence clearly shows that humanity acted in self-defense against an existential threat. The Sketh were actively consuming human victims when the pathogen was deployed. No other option for survival existed. Under these circumstances, lethal force was justified. The Arbiter paused. However, this tribunal also wishes to formally censure the Valdori Collective for its role in this tragedy. An investigation will be launched into Valdor quarantine policies and their treatment of species under their protection. Changes will be required. Several Valdori delegates stood up in protest but were shouted down by others. Finally, the arbiter said, "This tribunal extends an invitation to humanity. You have proven yourselves to be a species of remarkable strength and difficult choices. We would be honored to welcome you as full members of the Galactic Alliance." Alina looked at Admiral Chen. The old man gave her a small nod. She turned back to the arbiter. "Humanity is grateful for this invitation, and we must respectfully decline." Confused murmurs spread through the chamber. "For 150 years, the Valdori kept us in what they called protection," Alina explained. "They decided what we could know and what we could not. They decided which threats we would face and which we would be spared. They made choices for us without our knowledge or consent." She shook her head. "We cannot accept membership in an alliance that operates this way. We cannot trust others to protect us when that protection means hiding the truth. Humanity will make our own way among the stars. We will face our own dangers and make our own mistakes. We will earn our place through our own efforts." The arbiter tilted his head. "You would refuse the benefits of alliance, the trade agreements, the shared technology, the collective security?" "For now, yes," Elena said. "Perhaps someday when trust has been rebuilt, we can discuss partnership again. But it must be true partnership, between equals, with no secrets and no hidden judgments about which species are expendable." She straightened her shoulders. "Humanity learned something. Terrible in the war against the Sketh, we learned that we are capable of extinction. We learned that we can make the hardest choices when survival demands it. But we also learned something else." Alina looked around at the thousands of alien faces watching her. "We learned that our enemies are not always monsters. The Sketh were people. Flawed, dangerous people who could not change their nature, but still people. We built a memorial for them because they deserved to be remembered. Not as villains, not as victims. Just as beings who lived and died in a universe that gave them no good options." Admiral Chen spoke up from his chair. "My sister loved the Skith, even knowing what they were. Even after everything they did to her, she loved them. In her final message, she asked me to forgive them. She said they were only doing what nature demanded. She said they were not evil." His voice cracked. "It took me 20 years to understand what she meant. The Sketh were trapped by their biology just as surely as we were trapped by our love for our children. Neither of us could be anything other than what we were. And so we destroyed each other." He wiped his eyes. "I hope there is something beyond death. I hope that somewhere, Sarah and Elder Thrava are together again, free from the hunger that drove them apart. I hope they have found the peace that we could not give them here." The chamber sat in heavy silence. Alina placed her hand on Admiral Chen's shoulder again. Then she addressed the tribunal one final time. "Humanity will leave this place today as we arrived. Alone, unprotected, unaffiliated, but we will not leave unchanged. We have seen how the galaxy truly works. We have learned that protection can be a cage and that kindness can be a trap." She paused. "We have also learned that there are other quarantine zones, other species trapped with unknown dangers, other peoples crying for help that will never come." Elena's eyes found a young Valdor delegate in the crowd. The same one who had whispered to her the day before, "We do not seek alliance, but we do seek justice. If there are others suffering as we suffered, humanity will find them. We will do what the Valdori would not. We will answer the calls for help." The young Valdori delegate nodded slowly. A small gesture, but Alina saw it. "This tribunal is adjourned," the arbiter announced. "Humanity is free to go." As the delegates began leaving their platforms, several approached the human delegation. They offered handshakes and words of sympathy. Some gave contact information and promised to stay in touch. The isolation Alina had expected did not come. Instead, humanity left the tribunal chamber with something more valuable than alliance membership. They left with respect, with understanding, and with a new purpose. Admiral Chen looked up at Alina as they walked toward the exit. "What happens now?" he asked. Alina smiled grimly. how we find those other quarantine zones. Now we become what we needed 30 years ago. Someone who answers when others call for help. Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment. Then a faint smile crossed his weathered face. Sarah would have liked that. Alina nodded. Yes, I think she would have. They walked out of the chamber together. Leaving behind the ghosts of 12 billion Sketh and the weight of impossible choices, the stars waited for them. Somewhere out there, other species were suffering in silence, trapped behind barriers they could not break. Humanity was coming, and this time they would answer.